Before we call the meeting to order, if everyone could please rise and we will execute our pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our January meeting of the Board of Governors of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. It's about 12:07 till then, so we'll call the meeting to order officially at 12:07. Alrighty, and roll call, if I can ask Sylvette, would you or Tom like to start roll call, please?
Sir. Ann Baum. Brian Dames.
Here.
Chuck Dycott. Mike Dowd. Frank Facciano.
Here.
Glenn Geisinger.
Present.
Thank you, sir.
Here.
John Hayes.
Here.
Larry Hemberger. Neil Copeland.
Present.
Ed Lozano.
Here.
Jeff Matskin. Ted Rosenberger. Mike Schwer. Matt.
Here. Here.
Chris Worley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we'll open up the meeting with some public comment. Do we have any public comment? Hi, guys. Welcome. And with no public comment, then we'll continue on to the next order of business, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
There's two. Just to clarify, there's November.
Oh, November,
There's two.
that's
I would do
right.
a separate motion for each.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the November 28th Board of Governors meeting?
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, you want
Aye.
to vote even on the minutes? Okay. Anybody against or opposed? Okay, motion passes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the December 20th meeting?
So moved.
So moved by Frank, seconded by Larry. Any questions, discussions, edits? We have a vote. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. Next order of business, let's go to our reports of the committees. So I, as a treasurer, usually run through the treasurer's report, but I'm going to pass that responsibility off to Todd. So Todd, if you don't mind.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to do my best, Eddie Lozano, treasurer report. So that means I can have like 45 minutes?
Hey, now that I'm chair, I can check that out.
All right. So that, you can go to the next slide here. This is year-to-date where we ended up. This is actually for the month. Historically, December's been kind of a low month for us, so we had a really good month. If you look here, we're at 465 net income. Yeah. Our budget was 756 because we had a lot of end-of-the-year kind of expenses, and last year we were 344. So we had a phenomenal month of December. For the year, again, 4.2 million. We budgeted 539. Last year we had 1.7 million. Again, we had a phenomenal year. Not much more to say other than we had a great year. Let's go down to the next slide. This is the passenger traffic, and we ended up the year at 0.5. You might say that's a modest increase, but actually, if you go back to here and actually pull the treasury report from September, when we had this 9.6 number, we were 3.7 negative year to date, and we were like, oh, we end up the year, we're only a little bit less, we're doing pretty good. We actually ended up the year on a positive note. December was our best month since 2011. So that's something to feel good about. With the additional Legion flights, that's good news, and some of the legacy carriers are picking up as well. So that's great news for us. Again, you can see Allegiant is leading the charge, and we're not losing as much in the other carriers as some of the other regional airports. But again, we've had a phenomenal year. We ended up the year 0.5. go to the next slide. So that, one of the things we talked about in our in our financial meeting, finance meeting, we talked about what was the additional revenue due to. I mean, we had a phenomenal year with 4.2 higher than our budget. And that's a big number, but if you think about last year, we talked about, we're still in a relatively new business cycle with the cargo business, and we budgeted conservatively. So, again, we budgeted 500,000, we said, hey, let's be conservative, and we had a much better year than we anticipated. Most of that additional revenue is due to the ground handling activity, which is both our cargo and our leasing. Both of them handle ground handling. And when we talk about extra activity on the airport, the thing that really works for us is that means more fuel sales. If you think about the number of events as far as snow in December, that meant more de-icing. So that means all these things contribute to additional revenue for the airport. More activity, more revenue. Our expenses, we've always done a great job of managing. And again, we start the year out, we are self-funded on our medical, so we assume no surplus. And actually last year we assumed a small surplus based on what our consultants told us at the time. We ended up with a lot more than that, about $200,000 more in our expenses. We also budget for anticipated unemployment because we self-insure that, so we ended up better than that. And our vacation liability, one of the things that we did internally is we changed our policy as far as cutting back the number of days that people can carry over. I mean, these numbers are pretty significant as far as days that people can carry over. So we reduced that number, we capped it for our non-union at 160 hours, still a pretty big number. That was over 100 and some thousand, I think it was $125,000 we saved in our liability just by doing that. So again, these policy changes result in real money. And then where did that money go? 3.4, 95% of that is ending in cash. And go to that other sheet. So that I wanted to pull that out because it's funny. We're always thinking about going forward, and it's nice to kind of look back and see from whence we've come. And this is actually from our 2017 budget. If you remember when we did our 2017, not 18, 2017 budget, we started off the year, we said, oh, we're going to be at 10.2, and slotted all the way over so that it's probably slide it. Keep going. We thought we end up the year with 6.2. And I remember a lot of people saying, we're only going to have that much left over, 250 of unrestricted money. And there was a lot of moans and groans in the room. And now all that extra surplus is sitting in cash. So we have a lot more resources as far as cash available to us for additional capital projects next year. But it's good to kind of look back because, again, you kind of always, we're always thinking forward, but you go back and look and say, wow, you know, what you doing on that money? We thought we would be at 6.2. And we have 9.5, somewhere around that number as far as cash. So most of that cash is sitting in the bank, so you can actually see it. So I just wanted to point that out. Anybody have any questions? Again, you know, whenever you have great months, you're supposed to just get up here, drop the mic. Connie's supposed to just raise her hand or touchdown, and that's it. But when you have a great month, great year, it's a tribute to the staff, the board, everyone collaborated to put together a really good year, so we should focus on that. Any comments? Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the treasury report as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. And before we continue on with our next order of business, you know, Todd's report, I think we kind of, you know, obviously we've been living it for the last few months, in particular as we came through to the end of the year. But, you know, the proof is in the pudding. We had a wonderful, wonderful year. And I think it's a testament to the hard work, the smart work, the dedicated work that our staff has put forth throughout the year. So I'm going to ask staff to please stand. So please just stand in your place so that everybody, Colin, And I'm going to ask who's ever remaining in the room, let's give these folks a round of applause. Can we make some noise? Come on, this is a good deal. Yeah, let's go. And now, I'd like the board members who are in the room to please stand. And I'm going to stand here along with you. To me, and I'd love to get a round of applause from the remaining folks in the room as well, but this is a testament of us working together with staff collaboratively. I think, we did a great job of guiding staff where appropriate, leading them, supporting them, even nudging them, But that's our job. That's our fiduciary responsibility. It's not just about coming here and just, rubber stamping, as sometimes you know. It's about working together and providing our subject matter expertise to staff and helping them out and supporting them. So I think, a round of applause for our fellow board members who did a great job as well. And before we move on, what I'll say is this is what winning is about. I like to coach, I coach kids, etc., and I like to win, and this is winning, okay? Winning is, we just blew the numbers out of the park, right? It was, tremendous increase versus previous year versus plan. And again, I think that's because, we worked together, we worked smarter, we had better data, we were more strategic, and we were results oriented. And I think if we continue to do that, we're gonna have tremendous years going forward. And I would add, what's our mission statement, Tom?
Well, the mission statement is actually a pretty long one. And we're talking about a customer-centric organization, but the vision statement is really about being the best regional airport system in North America.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the sum of it. We did that in our strategic meeting this past year. It's to be the best regional airport system in the country. And you know what? We're on our way, right? Those numbers and the performance that we put forth last year is the first step in the direction of achieving that mission. Okay, it was a smart mission, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, right? And you couldn't have made that mission statement 3 years ago. It was not achievable, but it is now. So I just wanted to take this opportunity because, we kind of just go through the order of business, but I think we should reflect back on, we had a tremendous 2017. We won. Winning feels good. It feels a heck of a lot better than losing, okay? And a great coach once said, winning is a habit, So is losing. So I think we're getting into the habit of winning now. So let's keep that momentum. Now that vision and mission of being the best airport system, regional airport system in the U.S., it's achievable, and we're on our way. So let's continue that, okay? Let's continue the collaboration between staff and the board. Let's be more specific, results-oriented, et cetera, and we'll get there. So again, congrats. Thanks very much, staff, board. Thank you very much for all the hard effort that we put forth, and I think it's paid dividends. So let's move on. Next order of business. Let's go into the executive committee, and then I'll pass that off to Tom.
Sure. So first item is the approval of the 121 Willowbrook Road Agreement of Sale Closing Resolution, and I'll turn that over to Darren.
Sure, thanks, Tom. So these are just really two administrative matters. We are gonna try to rubber stamp these, hopefully, but we did previously approve the purchase of these two properties, 121 and 131 Willowbrook Road. But in order to go to closing, we need a resolution from the board that authorizes somebody on staff to sign documents. That's really what these two resolutions do. So it authorizes me to sign the closing documents for 121 and 131. So we'll need to do it as two separate resolutions, but that's, so I'd be happy to answer questions, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Pretty straightforward. Was there any questions, comments, et cetera?
Yes.
Anybody from who's called in?
You're looking for a motion for both 121 and 131?
We'll need to do two separate motions, two
Motion
separate
to
approvals.
I'll make
resolutions.
the motion for 121 Willowbrook to approve the resolution.
Okay, so motion moved by Neil to approve the resolution
I'll second
as
it.
presented, seconded. Okay, any discussion? Okay, with no discussion, then let's just take this to a vote. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, hearing nothing, motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll move to the next,
So we're looking for a motion for the 131. That same resolution again, just a different property address.
can I get a motion for the 131 approval of sale?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Brian is making a motion for the approval of the 131 agreement of sale. Can I get a second? Larry seconding. Open for discussion. Hearing no discussion, we'll take this to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, no opposition, motion passes. Thank you very much. At this point, I just want to make a quick announcement. We did this and covered this at the executive committee meeting, but Mike Dowd, our chair, has appointed John Hayes as our nominating committee chairperson. So John is on the phone. Just wanted to confirm that. Congratulations, John. I think in terms, do you want to just spend a minute, John, and just walk us through the process, please, of the nominating committee and then the elections itself, which I think takes place in April?
Right, they do. We formed a nominating committee. It's going to be myself, Brian Daines, and Ted Rosenberger. We are in the process. We'll be identifying candidates for the officer positions for the board, as well as the county representatives to the executive committee. We need to appoint one from Lehigh County and one from Northampton County. So we'll be reaching out to the county executives as part of that process as well. Our intent is to have recommendations to the board for discussion in March and for action to be taken at the April board meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, John. Any questions, comments for John regarding the nominating committee? Okay, great. So thank you, John. We look forward to your committee delivering the recommendations and your upcoming vote. So let's continue on to the next order of business. And John, I'll pass it back to you for the Finance and Capital Planning Committee overview.
Okay, thank you, Andy. We had a good meeting last week, a lot of discussion points. We'll go through the action items at this point. First on the list is approval of multimodal change orders. Ryan, can you pick it up and walk everyone through what we have there?
Sure, yeah, thanks, John. So, John mentioned we did have some great discussions at our Finance and Capital meeting in regards to some lessons learned and kind of step forward with future projects to stay away from any issues we encountered with the multimodal project. But the big thing, just so everyone's aware, is with the big thing with the multimodal change orders were a lot of unforeseen conditions and some cost efficiencies that we ended up doing kind of save us more money on the back end. And the big takeaway that we learned was, and we had talked about this when we presented our 2018 capital budget, is conservative estimating, making sure we have contingencies in place. With the timing of this project, when we were moving it forward, and some of the conditions we encountered, we took a lot of the contingencies out prior to bidding rather than after the fact. So that's a big takeaway that we definitely want to move forward with some of our other projects. But again, the big thing for the last 4 months or so, we've been working with the contractor and the engineer. Actually, haven't forgot to introduce, but Cedric Johnson, our lead site civil engineer on the project. I had him here as well in case some technical questions came up. But we did talk a lot about this at the committee. But the big thing is, if you scroll down a little bit, that is, we ended up grouping all of the change orders into about 5 categories. And I'll go through some of them that are clear. But the big thing is, with some of the negotiations, is we also were able to bring down the total cost of the project of about $400,000 based on just changing in quantities, reductions of elements of the project that were put in the bid documents, but we were able to take out without taking away from the effectiveness of what we were given for the site. But again, the big thing, more than half of the changes were the soil conditions. And we talked about this before. Again, this is something we're learning to include in a lot of these underground site civil projects that we're doing, is we're running into a lot of unsuitable soil. Soil that just needs to be replaced, so we're not running into foundation issues, structural issues, supports, those kinds of things. And I mentioned as well, with some of the cost efficiency pieces, we're also doing a lot of proactive improvements, whether it be IT-related infrastructure, improvements where it saves us money in the long run from not having to come back, make the improvements at that time. And again, we were touching a site that hadn't been touched since about the 1960s, so we ran into a lot of unknowns at the time as well. So again, that's something that we want to make sure we keep in mind for future projects. But really, scroll down a little bit more so that, really the breakdown, and we had the attachment of how it was put into place, but really the breakdown ends up around $925,000, with, as you can see, we have about $156,000 of reduction, and that with that, plus the negotiation piece was that $400,000 that we had saved to kind of try and knock the number down. So, again, the big lesson learned, and again, we had a great discussion at the Finance and Capital about how we continue to work with the board and give some good summaries on, as projects are moving forward, here's something we ran into, this is the time, here's what we've done, but really making sure everyone's on the same page. But again, with this unsuitable soils, we talked about it for the Hangar 11 project and all these other excavation projects we might be running into some unknowns. So the other takeaway, I mentioned, we've talked about it before, for our runway rehabilitation project, we're doing a bit more surveying because we have the time, and given the critical nature of when we close the runway and when we do some of the improvements, we want to make sure we know as much as possible. So a lot of different factors, but I think in the end, which kind of dovetail into some of our numbers from last year, I think it was a really successful project. I think we do a lot of good things from the people that are using it, from our tenants and customers, but this is something we just need to looking for approval for that balancing change order.
I'll make the motion to approve the change orders as Ryan presented.
Okay, the motion is made by John. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Neil.
One quick discussion point, if I could, Eddie. We had a fairly long discussion in regard to information flow back to the board, in particular when we've got cases like this where the costs are north of 10% in excess of the original budgeted amount. We do include a 5% contingency in each estimate or each bid that goes out. So we do have some contingency dollars that are built into each contract. I'd like to get Chuck's input on this, so I'm not recommending any formal action at this point, but we're probably going to be using that 10% number as a guide in terms of what information would come back to the board for notification. We also will probably include a minimum dollar amount there as well, because if it's a small contract amount, we don't need to know the smaller dollar issues. So that's not in that we will continue to discuss at the Finance Committee and come back to the board with a recommendation when we have it.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Thank you, John. Is that something that we want to formalize going forward down the road?
I'd like to get Chuck's input first, since he's got more real estate experience than all of us put together, frankly, except for Neil. Neil's a real estate guy, and I know he supports the 10%. But let's get Chuck's input as well, make sure we've got everything captured, and then come back, hopefully at the next meeting with that formal recommendation.
And I agree with John. It's something I think we should study. We should also study the size and scope of the project. We have to keep it in perspective, the amount. There's a big difference in a $10 million project versus $50,000 at the end of the day. So I think we can keep balance in what we're proposing.
Okay, great.
Agreed.
Well, this was really, as we discussed, this was a pretty insightful learning. Big dollars. I think we got a handle on it going forward. So I think we're in a good position now, going forward in terms of managing our CapEx and having some guardrails, et cetera. Any other questions, comments?
Just a question. So with the data that they found then on the soils and the other things, is that something that the engineering data or whoever the source of that, can that be, talking about information flow, can that be shared with other contractors and other firms so that they have the benefit of that?
Yes. Yeah, it can, a lot of it's very Ron said, a lot of it's very site-specific, which is what we're running into here.
That is the challenge, is the site has a lot of variance. The airport itself has a lot of variance in the soil conditions, but certainly the information that was gathered for this particular area can be shared and utilized. And as you continue to complete projects, you build a database in itself that can be used, and it's only going to improve the ability to deliver the design.
I have a question. Do we have any early insight on some of the soil learnings that we're getting from all of these projects? Does it apply generally, universally to most, if not all, of the airport authority's property? Or is this something that's, hit or miss, piece by piece?
The challenge is there is a lot of variance on the airport site. You've had a historic sinkhole issue, but like Ryan mentioned, the runway rehab project, we have an extensive geotechnical investigation that's going. Typically, you're putting borings, and with borings, it's kind of Swiss cheese of the area, and you're using that information to determine what the global makeup is.
Yeah.
But in this scenario, we're actually using electronic resonance, so we're literally going back and forth the entire site because we recognize the importance of being able to reopen the runway and trying to not completely prevent sinkholes, but be able to mitigate them if they do occur and limit the risk associated with them. Each project has its own challenges, particularly when you're going underground. Because underground, I wish I was Superman and I could see everything underground, but when you're going underground, there's always going to be some unforeseen conditions. And as a geotechnical engineer on our team went forward with multimodal, the concern was not risking safety. You have foundations, you have canopies, there was some disturbance there underneath where the foundations were going, so what they wanted to do is remove that unsuitable soil and replace it with stone. And that's essentially what happened. And as a result, from a long-term standpoint, the risk of settlement, the risk of cracking above is reduced. So that's essentially what, but to answer your question, yes, when there is time, a thorough investigation should be done of the geotechnical conditions. Sometimes the time is limited, so they just use the data that's available. The challenge here at the airport is that there's a lot of variance. So really, sometimes it's better to spend up front for the investigation to limit what happens on the back end.
And the technology for knowing what's underneath
Yes.
improves all the time, right?
It does, and that's kind of what they're using some cutting edge technology right now for the runway to determine where the shallow rock is, which is why that's what's driving the sinkhole issue. Okay, historically you've had the sinkhole problem because fines are moving, and this is what they call a karst area where it's shallow rock has holes and voids and allows movement. But now the technology that they have is allowing to kind of give us X-ray vision underneath the ground so we can at least limit the potential.
And that's the whole point, is limit or mitigate, you can't
Right.
eliminate it. And I think coupled with, increased diligence up front and also appropriate contingencies on the backside,
Yes.
will mitigate the overall exposure to the airport authority.
Yeah, and just in general, to your point, for the board, documentation is key for mitigating costs on the back end construction. And for years, there's been a lot of maintenance and reactionary type improvements, and sometimes the documentation's not there. Now, when you do the investigation up front, the documentation's there. It gives all of us a better ability to understand what the conditions are. And over time, and in 5 years, you'll find you have a database. I know that's what we're working together. You have a database of every project you've done, and be able to kind of get that information up front, reduces the design costs, also reduces the construction costs for the long term.
Okay.
So I have
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I attended this meeting, there's a lot of us did. I think it should go without saying that a lot of work was done, even though there was a lot, it seems like a huge amount. There was a lot of extenuating circumstances. I think the people that were here for that board meeting, that committee meeting, would all agree that it was once and done kind of situation. And through nobody's fault, just one of those unforeseen things.
And thanks for the comment, Larry, and like we said, we'll take this learning now going forward. It'll be very valuable. We'll get some guardrails, and hopefully we'll mitigate any financial risks going forward. So why don't we take this matter to a vote? So the motion for approval of multimodal change orders as presented. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All those against or opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much, Ryan. John, you want to handle the next one, approval of the pension plan amendment? Hey, John, can you hear us?
I'm sorry about that, I had you on mute. This one, next one on the agenda is approval of the pension plan amendment. This one goes to Todd. Todd, can you take over?
Sure, I got it. As we've mentioned earlier, we were talking about some of the policy changes that we made. One of the changes that we made is for our pension plan for new hires, so that they will go to a defined contribution plan as opposed to a defined benefit. So that'll save us money in the long run. We won't have to worry about keeping that plan up to code or up to cost, so to speak, for new hires. So this is a long-term cost saving, and it's just some paperwork to do that. Any question, Larry?
Yeah, I did. We talked a lot about this at the meeting the other day. Now that we're going to, assuming this is a 401K type.
Defined contribution, correct.
What is the match that we don't want to put in?
The plan is 3% where you contribute or not, and then you get another 3% if you put in 3%, so you get a total of 6. So it's a very nice plan. It just gets us out of the defined benefit world for new hires. And eventually, we're going to have to talk about that for existing folks.
So with this new program, how long do they invest? 5 years?
It is incremental vesting, so they, that's like 20, it goes up each year, so you get a percentage each year. I think you're fully vested after 5 years, I believe. Which is different than our current.
Okay, any other questions for Todd regarding the pension plan amendment?
I'll make the motion to approve the pension plan amendment as presented.
Okay, thank you, John. Can I get a second? Second. Seconded by Larry. Okay, any discussion on the pension plan amendment? Hearing none, we'll take this for a vote. All those in favor of approving the pension plan amendment as presented, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, hearing no oppositions, motion passes. Thank you very much. John, would you like to take the next order of business?
Yep, next order of business is approval of the 2017 audit engagement letter. This is a routine or rubber stamp. We are in year 3 of our 3-year engagement with our external audit firm. Everyone has a copy of the letter, the audit engagement letter that is required to be approved by the board. It's good corporate governance to have it taken care of. Todd, is there anything you want to point out in particular in the letter?
No, sit down. No, this is the 3rd year of our engagement with Pro Forward. We've had a good partnership with them. I know they've had a lot of engagement with both the board and staff. And they have a lot of industry-specific knowledge as far as airports. So this is just their fee at $35,000. They tell us on a regular basis, you're getting a good deal. I think we are. So this is the 3rd year. So this is formalizing the 3rd year.
Okay. So any questions, comments regarding the approval of the audit engagement?
I'll move to approve as presented.
Okay, thank you, John.
I'll
Can I get a
second that
second?
motion.
Seconded by Neil. Any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, let's take this to a vote. All those in favor of approving the 2017 audit engagement letter as presented, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, good. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And John, last but not least, the award of trash and recycling services contract.
Yep, I hope, Eddie, you're able to control the excitement in the room as we get to this one.
We're all on the edge of our seat for this one.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and turn this one over to Tom. Good news is The award that we are recommending is our existing trash and recycling firm. They performed well, and they came in by a long shot with the low bid in terms of the bidding process. Tom, you want to walk through the details, please?
Yeah, sure. This is an agreement, 5-year agreement is what we're looking for, which is consistent with what we awarded previously in 2013. Also, as John mentioned, to Advanced Disposal. And so you can see the previous contract amount there at $96,000. So just a modest increase for the next 5 years, 112, and that is for 5 years. This provides all of the trash and recycling, single stream recycling services for all 3 airports. So we would recommend awarding the 5-year recycling and trash contract to Advanced Disposal from Northampton for 112. 77966.
Okay, any questions?
I'll move to approve the contract as presented.
Okay, thank you, John. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Frank. Any questions, comments, discussion?
I just had a comment. We ran by these numbers the other day. Do you have any idea what the big discrepancy is from 112 to 296 or whatever it was?
So we did talk to Advanced Disposal, and again, they're comfortable with their number. You can see what their number was 5 years ago and where they're at today. I think, when we look at it, really we're talking about location. We hear that location. I think this is part of this. They're right here in Northampton, just up the street here from the airport. And some of the other locations in Gilbertsville, Audubon, a little bit of a further distance for them to service our airport system. So.
Brian?
Just a quick comment. We talked about, like in the financial report, staff controlling costs effectively. And I think here is a example that we can see. This isn't an unknown. They know that they're going to get the service that they want, but here's an example of costs being controlled that I think we can see. That would be my comment.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian. And I know we would kind of, be a little lighthearted about trash, but I would comment that, credit to the suppliers for doing their job and flying under the radar. And I don't believe we've had any significant issues regarding trash or recycling. And the costs were very reasonable. And I think we're continuing on, and we hope that continues. But, I think, at the end of the day, it's good cost. It seems to be running well. This is what we like to hear and see. So good job to staff for managing expenses well. And I think good job to our partners who are doing their end of Oregon, maintaining our airports in a good site.
So, curiosity, how often do they put out the trash?
And so it varies, and I can give you the detail on that, but it's once or twice a week in general. Depends on the location. So we have multiple locations on this campus as well as Queen City and Braden. Recycling, not as much as some of the trash containers. So it varies, but once a week to twice a week in some cases is typical. But we do have some locations where it's maybe just twice a month, depending on the container.
Okay, so any other discussion points on this? Okay, let's take this to a vote. All those in favor of awarding the trash and recycling services contract as presented, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, great. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Anything else regarding finance and capital planning?
Yep, just one other thing, wanted to point out in case make sure everybody had seen it. In the financials section on Nova's agenda and in your packet, we asked staff at the last Finance Committee meeting to put together an executive summary to cover the high points, both positive and negative, in terms of the financial statements. There's a lot of information in those statements, and we wanted to make sure everyone had the ability to zero in on those matters of materiality. So you see that today, Todd was able to put that together for today's meeting, and you'll see that as a regular piece going forward. I encourage everyone not just to rely on the executive summary, though. You want to make sure you go through the statements and pick up on anything that might not be in the exec summary so that the board's comfortable with the financials as they're presented. and ask any questions that they think appropriate.
Hey, John, great catch. Thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, and that's something that Todd, we'll definitely, have going forward, right?
That's in the slide.
It's in the slide, okay.
Yeah, that's what it was referenced in that slide that we put at the top.
Yep, okay,
You want to put that in,
okay.
Treasurer's
Okay, John, so I think that's something that is a good practice. We'll continue going forward, right? And then we'll just continue to formalize it into the monthly board meetings? Is that
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay,
Yep.
so moving on, I'll pass the floor to Tom for the interim director's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. As we discussed earlier, from an air service perspective, we did see an increase in December. Total passengers up 8.2%. Total cargo year-to-date up 64.5%. So some good growth there. We did make an announcement, I think we saw some of that in the media, about our additional service frequencies with Allegiant to our existing destinations. So 100 additional flights now through the end of May. As far as we can see in the schedule, there's probably some more to follow on that. Additional update, January 22nd, we did have a real estate closing for Lot 4 and Lot 5 in Allen Township. And that encompassed 91.2 acres of land between Lot 4 and Lot 5, as well as an easement area for stormwater management. But the net proceeds to the authority, just a little over $3.9 million. Now that does go to our AIP restricted account, so it does have to be used for very specific projects that are AIP eligible. But again, going back to some of the great initiatives we're working on the real estate side, I think that was a terrific win. And so thanks to Darren and his team for all the work on the Lot 4 and Lot 5 closings. In addition, we are going to be continuing to talk a little bit about Braden Airport development, and so we're having some discussions this week with Works Township to further that conversation about, again, looking at options at Braden. In terms of upcoming events, on February 12th, we have a Fear of Flying seminar. So anyone who's interested in attending that can sign up. That'll be in the evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m. right here at the Lehigh Valley Airport. And also we have our 5th TSA pre-check enrollment center right here at LVI. And at this point, we've already processed 5,642 applicants through just the enrollment centers here. So this is running from February 26th through March 9th. We'll be putting out some more information on that. I think we do have some information coming out on that as well. So just something to keep in mind. In terms of Braden Air Park, again, we do have the marketing campaign, that marketing initiative we talked about some time ago. We did kick that off last Thursday, so contacting specialty aviation service providers, whether it's a flight school, aircraft maintenance, or avionics shops within a 100-mile radius of Braden. And we did provide, I think, a card here at your setting. So we're sending this card out to those businesses along with a letter to get a hold of Matt McConnell from our property side of the house, and just start to put out some feelers. We've been successful in completing the project at Braden, really kind of giving the airport a little bit of a facelift as we continue to move forward. We think it's a great time to start this initiative, so we're excited about that. And last but not least, we did receive our new front mount snow removal broom, using that a little bit today to just brush off some water off the runway. But that's a 22-foot wide high-speed broom, and that was through an FAA grant that we accepted last year. So we're excited to have that in service, and we'll be expecting our another broom next month. So we'll take delivery of that. So those are replacing two 1990 vintage brooms. So we're very excited to have those, and be happy to answer any questions if there's any questions.
Okay, opening the floor to questions for Tom.
Is the additional cargo ramp open now?
The additional cargo ramp is open. It is.
Going back to that broom, obviously a large piece of equipment, what is and refresh my memory, what's the implication to the airport authority as far as snow removal or whatever other capacity it has? Does it double the speed? Does it
It's
increase our
probably
efficiency?
triple the speed.
Wow.
Yeah, so the new broom is referred to as a high-speed rotary broom. Front mount broom sits out in front of the vehicle. And so this vehicle is able to move much quicker down the runways and taxiways to remove snow. And its turning radius is also much improved. So in terms of just maneuvering on the airfield, being able to get on and off, active runways and those types of things to perform snow removal, it's much more efficient for us.
It's in the corners better, is everything?
Yeah, we haven't had it on two wheels yet, but it's able to turn through those pavement radiuses pretty well. And so when we turn around at the end of a piece of pavement, we're able to do that very efficiently. And so it's received a lot of accolades from our airport maintenance staff. They're really excited to have that piece of equipment in-house now, so.
I want to be shotgun next to Frank when he comes in.
We'll set up a course with some cones first.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments for Tom and the executive director report?
I mean, I have 2 quick comments.
Sure, of course.
So, and I think I mentioned this before, but just from a pilot standpoint, the broom, especially if you couple that with a plow that can move like mass quantities off to the side and then often followed with a broom. For braking action, for those of us who are pilots, it makes a big difference. Because a plow can only get down so low, but the broom can actually improve your braking action, which is kind of a critical thing when it comes to performance. So from my personal standpoint, I applaud this because it actually makes a great operational difference. The other thing is, at Braden, I was out there yesterday and I saw the sanders very busy on the floor, getting ready to put the epoxy coating on. So it was nice to see that moving forward.
Correct, so just waiting on some good weather to get that temperatures.
Is there a curing temperature, I imagine?
Yes, and I'm not sure if I don't know the temperature offhand, Ryan, if you.
I don't offhand, but there is a temperature.
Yeah, anyway, I'm sure, they were sanding yesterday, they weren't applying anything, but they were getting all the old stuff off of there, which was bad. I mean, it was terrible.
Right, so we took the opportunity to, as part of that project, to replace the ceiling, to repair that, repair the walls, repaint those, and doing the floor. I think it just completely changes the look of the facility, so I'm excited to see when those floors are complete as well.
Are you doing an outreach to our customers at Braden with the video that we saw at the GA meeting and the information that's now on the website and the postcards and
Letting folks know what's happening, absolutely. So we want to reach out to all of our customers and tenants and let them know kind of where we are and some of the marketing efforts, so. Absolutely.
I'd like to comment that I want to say thank you to Tom and staff, because if we think about it, we had a transition in senior leadership towards the second half of last year when our previous executive director moved on to a new position and role. And usually, or sometimes, that can cause bumps in the road, if not major disarray. And I think it's a testament to the professionalism of Tom and the senior leadership team that you guys managed to work through that almost seamlessly. So we appreciate that. Good job working through that very well. And hopefully we will finalize the executive director position early this year. And then we'll continue on. But I did want to highlight that because I've seen transitions in leadership. And a lot of times they don't go so well. And I think this executive leadership team did a great job of managing that transition well. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Darren and team, and everybody here for that good work. So anything else for Tom? Okay, hearing none, let's move on. Thank you very much, Tom, and we'll pass it off to Rob for the solicitor's report.
Sure. I'll keep this short and simple. Statement of financial interest forms are due by May 1st. The same forms that you fill out every year if you're a new board member, you're filling it out for last year, so we will have to get that from, if there are any board members that were on last year that are no longer on as well. You return those directly to Savette. Certainly if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either our office or Savette, and we'd be happy to help you work through those issues. Unless there's any questions, the remainder of the report I'll defer to executive session, which will be regarding anticipated litigation.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any questions for our solicitor? Okay, hearing none, why don't we move on then to any new business? Gentlemen on the phone, any new business?
None for me.
Okay,
No.
great. Okay, we'll just move on then, and at this point, Rob, is there a reason for us to go into executive session?
I believe the intent was, yeah, just briefly, I don't anticipate it'll be long, but a brief executive session for anticipated litigation.
Okay, great, thank you. So, can I get a motion to go into executive session, please? Motion by Frank.
We do not anticipate a vote unless there's something else, not for that.
Great.
Okay, do I need a second? Second from Neil? Okay, thank you. So we're gonna go into executive session. So thank you, Colin, and public and media. At this point, we're gonna get ready to adjourn our meeting. If there's anything else for the good of the order, please say so now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so thank you very much for a good meeting. I'm gonna call for an adjournment. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, Neil, motioning to adjourn our meeting. Meeting is concluded. Thank you again, everyone. Appreciate it.
Nice job, Eddie.
Thank
All
you.
right.